All right. Your Excellencies, Your Royal Majesties, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me welcome you to our today's webinar conference on the role of the youth in promoting peace and development in the African continent. This meeting is being hosted by the African Union Youth Assembly, and I will be your moderator for the day. Honorable Ambassador Kelvin Nyamache. Honorable Ambassador Kelvin Nyamache is the chairman of the steering committee of the African Union Youth Assembly and its director of events, summits and conferences. Very quickly we begin, but before we begin, I request you to give us your profile in the chat box. You can tell us who you are, the country whence you're coming from, the organization you belong, and any position that you have in that organization, plus any other information that you've deemed fit for this August assembly. Now, dear ladies and gentlemen, permit me call to order the meeting, starting with a word of prayer from one of the leading bishops in East Africa and the director of an international university, Bishop Dr. Isaac Idambo. Bishop Dr. Isaac Idambo will feel welcome and lead us through an opening prayer.
Thank you so much, my friends. Let's pray in the name of the Lord. Father, in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you for the day. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you for the season. We thank you, Lord, because you are bringing us together tonight so that we can also be able to serve your people. We can be able to serve and also deliberate on the responsibility you've given us as your people. This particular day and this particular night, we want to ask your Holy Spirit to guide us through. We want to ask your communion to be within us. We want also to ask for your wisdom. We want to ask for your understanding. We desire the Lord Almighty, this particular desire of bringing African youth into a realization of development, it shall come to pass and it shall come to its implementation. So blessing and blessing to each one of us. In Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bishop Dr. Isaac Idambo. Now, dear ladies and gentlemen, as I observed earlier on, the theme of our today's meeting is the role of the youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. We envisage that together as one, we're gonna make Africa one of the best of all possible best continents that we'll all be proud of, and a continent that we'll call home. Now, at this juncture, permit me welcome Dr. Monique Lynch to give us welcoming remarks. Dr. Monique Lynch.
Thank you, moderator. Good evening, Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues, and guests. Thank you for being here with us today. We are very pleased to be able to welcome all the young people in attendance and all the young at heart as well. As we celebrate November as World Youth Month, today we are very proud to start off our celebrations with this special webinar. But before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all those who have assisted in any form to make this event come together to become a success. We could not have done it without you. Today will be very impactful as we learn and we share our knowledge. We have one aim, and that is to build the Africa that we want. So a very warm welcome to each and every one of you, and we have a great lineup just for you. Thank you. Back to the moderator.
Thank you, Her Excellency, Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch, for your welcoming remarks. Now, very quickly, dear ladies and gentlemen, we move to the King of Baland, His Royal Majesty, King Emir Hayawi.
Good evening for everyone. It is my honor to be with you in this very important Zoom meeting. And it is about, of course, how the youth in the Africa will be developed, so that it is a very, very important thing to discuss this with you all on how to promote the youth in the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Royal Majesty, King Emir Hayawi, for such scintillating opening remarks. We feel so humbled to have you with us here in today. Now, very quickly, Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, let's now have the Prime Minister of Baland, Her Royal Majesty, Professor Queen Eden Trinidad. Her Royal Majesty, feel welcome.
Hello, good evening. Oh, sorry, wait. Good evening to all, and I thank you from my heart, as we are very, very grateful, and I'm very, very grateful and honored to be invited and be given opportunity to speak and address the youth. I would like to commend our moderator for being so lively as a moderator. And thank you to our two Beerland representatives, Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch in Jamaica and Honorable Dr. Adrian Daisley from Barbados. Thank you so much. And of course, to the African Union Youth Assembly for their support for the establishment of this new country in the African continent, the state of Beerland in Beertawiland between Sudan and Egypt. Good evening. I don't know if I'm going to continue with my message or not.
You can't continue with your message, Your Royal Majesty.
Okay. Sorry, I'm very, very sleepy because it's 2 o'clock in the morning in the Philippines. But I don't want to miss this important webinar. Good evening, Your Majesty King Emir, and good evening to all excellencies, honorables, and highnesses, and to the youth. I hope that there are really youth here, because I don't want to speak to my fellow speakers only. I'm addressing the youth. So I'm going to just speak simple, doable, and practical suggestions. Well, young people, you're the future of Africa. You know that. You must be proud that you're an African, that you are born, or were born in Africa, which is known to be the richest, wealthiest, from the ground to the sky or from the sky to the ground. You have enormous solar energy, and your ground is a giant vault, ocean of precious and non-precious mineral deposits, petrol, gas, name it. So it will be surprising and acceptable if the young and unacceptable if you, the young people, will not do your part for the development of this beautiful continent. Of course, the world knows Africa or the history of Africa, and we no longer need to reiterate here now, for I know that you know your history about the colonization, the slavery, and which is why we have the African diaspora. But you don't need to dwell on those now, but you need to focus on the present and the future, for you are the future. Youth, young minds, young people. I'm not talking about the young at heart. I'm talking about the real youth of Africa or in the Africa. I'm sure that you know who those successful African youths, but most of the time they don't live in Africa, but were born and grew up and became successful in other countries, in other richer and greener pastures, so they say. But for you who are living in Africa, what is your role for the development of Africa in promoting peace and development? Well, get educated, learn new technologies, be innovative. If you continue to have a very low mentality that you are a Black and that people will discriminate, well, the youth have creative minds. Think about your future and think how to help develop Africa. Africa is an ocean of wealth, ocean of human resources, and sleeping giants of gifted and talented young people. All you need to do is to be open for change, to discover and enhance what is in you, and to dream like those children and youth in South Korea, in China. They don't want to be simple and mediocre people. For example, the youth in Korea. Several years ago, we started seeing the beautiful and handsome faces of Koreans. High nose, fair and bright skin, slim. They are creators of fashions and music videos and movies. The beauty without makeup. See, the beauty without makeup, because you become beautiful even without makeup. But actually, they have makeup, but there's no use of colors. They still put cosmetics on their faces, but it's not the different psychedelic use of colors. It's what they call natural looks, no makeup looks. And that helps too in the development of their countries, of their country. The music and videos, cosmetics, clothes, and apparels are like hotcakes, selling like hotcakes. So it's a big industry in Korea. They are selling around the world. This is just a simple example. Chinese says as well, young people are becoming the entrepreneurs. The CEOs no longer used to be the oldest or the CEOs. Now is the young people who are the CEOs, young business people. I love Africa. I love all your bling bling. I love stones. I love colors. You Africans are the rainbows on earth, because the rainbow is in the sky, but of course is still part of the earth. But I mean, you can touch the rainbow. But for me, Africa is the rainbow on this earth. Your role in advanced technology, in building peace. Lead, get education, and lead. Be the game changer. If there are those youth shouting on the streets, calling for change, for the leadership, well, you have to stand up and not to join them, but to do what you do when you want to develop something. You have to contribute. There must be a contribution from each of you. You don't look at your government leaders and put your fingers on them saying, hey, you're the governor, you're the senator, you're the president. Do this, do that for us. Because every country in Africa have its own problem. Whether political, economy problem, you cannot expect the government leaders to do everything. The youth must contribute to the government or the development of Africa. I mean, that's given. How are you going to do that? You may say, don't talk to us, to African youth like that. You don't tell us. I understand. I don't want to tell you or teach you about your role because you are the one who should be thinking of that. You don't need me to tell you. Then be more responsible. Stop being dependent to your parents. Stop asking money from your parents. Do something. During Saturdays and Sundays, maybe you can find a part-time job or a few hours work if your parents are not financially able to do something that you can do for yourself. Be a peacemaker. Avoid those groups that are organizing themselves to criticize the government. You have no future there. Be a responsible citizen by studying, learning, and learning. Try to be inventors, researchers, scientists. Learn to be an entrepreneur at a very young age. Be teachers. I'm not dictating. These are all suggestions. You are not in the school because your parents cannot afford to send you to school or you don't like going to school. Young people, I'm here. Talk to me. I'll help you to get a free online short training course or courses. It's self-paced, especially the Africans who speak English, French. I have an education for you, which is free. And already, many have acquired this and received their diplomas. If the standard school is too much for you, too expensive for you, I can help you. And after you finish this online training course, short online training courses, free, you can choose from 150 courses, then attend free job placement and internship training after you receive your diploma from this university that I am talking about. This is equipping yourself and preparing to land a good, well-paying job. I will not tell you now what or where you can get those jobs. Take the short training courses first. You can find someone, your pastor or your eze. You can tell them, you can approach them. I need access to the internet. Can I come to your church every day and sit in a corner and take up my online training course? It can be a group of youth. The church leaders can open their churches to accommodate the youth and study as a group. You can get an education and it does not need to be expensive, even no cost at all. You have a mobile phone, you buy loads for FB, right? Or any social media platform that you have. Why not use your mobile and loads to get online free training courses that I am offering? I have been offering this, and several already have taken not only one course, but 3, one after another. There's no limit. And I have a group of Filipino educators who still registered for this, and they easily finish several short training courses, self-paced and free. Then it adds to their resume, and they end up getting promotions. They're actually already professionals, educators, school directors, principals. I'm here to give you practical solutions that will enable you, even without too much effort, as you are already contributing to the peace and development of your country. When the young citizens are busy equipping themselves, there will be less problems. I'm here to help you, as I am a teacher. I am an educator, and I am the Prime Minister of a new country in the African continent. Between Sudan and Egypt, that means I will be part of the development, and I have been part already of the development of Africa. So, if you young people will start leading and not start begging and not insist on being stubborn and become a menace in your society, if the young people will pick up your books, pens, and papers and start studying, experimenting, Google, and find out how you can be productive, and know that your role is to be good citizens of your country. And how you going to do that? By studying, working hard, studying hard, and being kind to people. If you see children scattered and doing nothing, gather those children, teach them to read and write, even for a few hours, so that no children of Africa will be non-readers, or we say in the Philippines, no read, no write. If you're good in computer, get some students and teach them how to use computer, how to search on Google. If you see children who doesn't have clothes, find a church and tell them, we need clothes for these children. These are simple things, actually. I know someone in Bangladesh, a young poet, and he's young people. He's giving his time for kids in Bangladesh. Every Saturday, he's gathering the children in the park, in an open space, and teach them how to write poetry. Then next, ask them to recite in front of some audience. Then another week or next week, art lessons, then swimming lessons, and the community. He started noticing what he is doing. They started to join him. Some are cooking porridge or food to feed them. See, people will help when they see how serious what you're doing. I have many examples. Myself, in one point of my life, before pandemic, I asked our Bureau of Fisheries, I went to the office of the Bureau of Fisheries to give, I asked them to donate baby fishes, the tilapia, or the fingerlings to the natives or indigenous people in the mountain. And they were the one, and they will be the one who will dig the fish pond. And then the Bureau of Fishery delivered the fishes, including the food for the fishes, after I reported that the fish pond was already ready for the fishes. All you need to do is to initiate. One time, I made a request to our municipal agriculture department or office for 1,000 fruit-bearing seedlings, because I want all my students and their parents from nursery to junior high school to do a tree planting in a nearby empty field. And they delivered the seedlings to my school. When my relatives saw my poster about tree planting, they called me and volunteered to send some money to buy lunch for the students. Youth, young people, lead the coastal cleanup or clean your community. Start it in your area. I believe that cleanliness is not only next to godliness, but it is a way to peace. If you saw some women being beaten, call the police and report the crime. If you see your fellow youth being bullied, call someone, the heads of your village, ask for help, do something. Don't close your eyes and ask, am I my brother's keeper? Don't say, I don't care. I have my own problems to solve. That's not the way to live. If you have a healthy country, if you have healthy people in all aspects of their lives, you will have a healthy country. Start being responsible and be good citizen. Don't forget, if you need education, talk to me or call Dr. Lynch and she will connect you to me. Finally, most of the time, you will not get encouragement from others. Learn to be self-reliant. Do not depend your salvation to others. For most of the time, people will fail you. Be peaceful citizens. Strategize. Find a good mentor. Do not sulk. Then you will discover that life is so beautiful. I want to leave this quote from my favorite author, Francis Cone. He said, believe while others doubt, work while others wish, persevere while others quit, pray and stay while others stray. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Royal Majesty, Professor Dr. Queen Eden Trinidad, Professor of Diplomacy and International Relations, for such a remarkably eloquent and scintillating submission for the youth of the continent of Africa. Indeed, as you noted, you give free education, online education course that will be good for the young people of the African continent as they also take part in the journey of mapping up the destiny of this continent. I do beseech you, dear ladies and gentlemen, kindly connect with Dr. Monique Lynch so that you can get enrolled and get some education. Dr. Monique Lynch will drop her contacts in the chat box and you will connect with her therein. Now, Your Royal Majesty, Your Excellencies, Honorable distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union Youth Assembly is a powerful intercontinental-wide African Parliamentary General Youth Assembly which operates as a youth government treaty body in Africa. The African Union Youth Assembly operates under its powerful Continental Youth Government Treaty, which has 54 African countries as its permanent signatories to the Youth Charter, with 54 youth presidents elected from each country within the African continent. It is the African Union Youth Assembly which has brought to you this maiden webinar conference on the role of the youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. Now, very quickly, Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the King of the Kingdom of Ohanese and Global President of the UN or NGO, His Royal Majesty, King Dennis Ozor Okafor. Welcome, Your Royal Majesty. His Royal Majesty, Dr. King Dennis Ozor Okafor, from Ghana. It seems he hasn't joined us yet. I do not know whether His Royal Majesty King Emir Hayawi, the King of Baland, had something to submit, because he gave us his opening remarks and he might be having something for the youth of the continent of Africa.
Yes, at the start of our Zoom meeting, I just greet all of you. And of course, I have too much to talk about the future of the youth of the Africa. You see here the symbol, that is a tree of knowledge. And some say also a tree of life. So this is our symbol in this very small country, a future country in the African continent. It will be a first humanitarian country in the Africa. And of course, the Prime Minister, she is the teacher. Also, I am the teacher also. So so that she talk about the education, and we will offer a free education, of course, about the future of the African youth. You should first looking for community, your community. I mean, if each community in the Africa, they help each other in education, in healthcare, and to keep the natural resources also, and keep away the militant, etc. They will be an ideal community. I mean, each community in each country in the Africa, so that in the future, you are of course the future leaders of the continent of Africa, future leaders. So some of you will be a politician, or let's say even minister, etc. Don't let the big companies to get, for example, 80% of your nature source. Because what I noticed, some African countries make contracts with such as a big Western company in their mineral source. So these companies, big companies, use these African countries by getting, for example, 80% or 70%. So you are the future leaders. Don't let it be happen. Don't sign those kind of contracts. Let your natural source for it will be your source, your future. So as I am now establishing this emerging a new country, so I discovered these things. For example, I will never let the Beerland, a new country, to sign with these big companies, and they will take all our resource, or mostly of that. No, we will not let that to be happen. So that you also, the future leader, keep yourself for a better future. Keep your even culture. Keep your health for yours, among your societies, your communities, so that you can be strong. I mean, community and strong African countries. Let be African more and more stronger. Don't let anyone or any outside country to colonize the continent by the economy. I mean, of course, not by the war. It is not more by force colonize the Africa. It is the way, an economic way. So be careful for that. Be one hand. We wish to be Africa, be one hand, and to the youth, to understand that will not join the militant. Those militants, it is not African militant. It is financed from the outside Africa. Just understand this thing. So keep in peace, be in peace, and you will see that you will be a great continent. Africa will be great because they have a great people, a great communities that also those communities keep their heritage. They're very wonderful. You have very wonderful culture and heritage. You have very good tribes that keep unity of its people and the nation. So be strong and educate ourselves as the Prime Minister Queen Eden said about the education. And I also today speak about your natural source to keep away from the colonized country. Be yourself. That it will also the Beerland country, and the Beerland country will be part of Africa and will be share all things with the Africa, and we are with Africa in our health and in our health. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Royal Majesty King Emir Hayawi, the King of Baland, for such a hard-hitting, scintillating and eloquent submission. Once more, it's an honor having you here with us today. Now, I don't know whether the King of the Kingdom of Ohanaeze and Global President of the UN or NGO, His Royal Majesty King Dennis Ozor Okafor, has joined us. If King Dennis Ozor Okafor from Ghana hasn't joined us yet, I would love now to move to Professor Nick Chisman. Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, your distinguished speakers, honorable ladies and gentlemen, Professor Nick Chisman is a professor of democracy at the University of Birmingham and was formerly director of the African Studies Center at the Oxford University. Welcome, Professor Nick Chisman. Professor Nick Chisman, it seems he hasn't joined us yet. Maybe Professor Nick Chisman, have you joined us, please? Now, very quickly, as we wait for Professor Nick Chisman, let's have Her Excellency Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch. Then we'll have Professor Nick Chisman, then Professor Kefa Otiso. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch is the Jamaican Ambassador for UNESCO, CYPAN, and Global Peace Chain. She's the African Union Youth Assembly Diplomatic President-elect for Jamaica, and also the State of Balance Youth Representative to the African Union Youth Assembly. Her Excellency Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Moderator Dr. Kelvin, Your Excellencies, other distinguished officials, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I want to take the theme, the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa, and take it in a slightly different direction. Now, Africa has the youngest population in the world, with more than 400 million young people between the ages of 15 to 35 years. Now, there's a popular quote that says, It only takes one person to change the world. But in Africa, there are 400 million persons, young persons in particular, that can change the continent. So why is there little to no advancement in development and peace? I'm sure we all know, whether by experience, whether by association, or gained knowledge, that young people in Africa have been disadvantaged, not included in the decision-making of leaders and governments. They are affected by unemployment and poverty, have little or no access to proper education, proper health care, social and environmental necessities such as clean water, stable electricity, and food. And we all know about the insecurity. Now, we know that these call for an increase of investment in economic, health, environmental, and social factors in order to improve the peace and development indexes of African nations. But if development is not supported or accompanied by peace, then economies and countries will end up with populations that are unproductive, menace to societies, or influenced by the wrong crowd. There is no real development without peace. So how can young people play an active role in peace and development? Now, when we talk about peace, we are talking, the very first thing to note is that peace comes from within. It starts within you before it starts with you. A lot of times, perpetrators are at war with themselves, so it becomes easy for them to take it out on other persons. There's also a saying that, that says, hurt people hurt people. So every young person must make a commitment to themselves to find that inner peace so that it can be channeled outwardly to create an impact in the Africa that we want. So what are the ways that you can promote this peace? Number one, develop your understanding of the frames of mind that promote conflict and violence in and around you. Ask yourself, what threatens your own well-being? What inner wars do you need to conquer to be at peace with yourself, so that that peace can be portrayed in society? A lot of persons are facing family issues, work issues, personal issues, and these manifest in criminal activities and or violent behaviors. And that's how war begins. Small disagreements escalated into something that could have been avoided, then it's passed on to generations, and individuals, families, tribes, villages, and countries become enemies against each other over something that was done before even any of them were born. Number two, develop your understanding of strong emotions that underpin conflict and violence. Now, this is where your mental health comes in. Recognizing how you feel about a particular situation, naming the feeling, and then manage that feeling. Your behavior is the outcome, but the root of the problem is how you truly feel. We have to address the root in order to have peace within, in order to make peace with others, and then promote that peace to a wider population. Now, if every young person can take that responsibility for themselves, to know their triggers, to practice conflict resolution, to practice anger and stress management, then that changes one family. Children growing up in that environment will have more self-awareness of promoting peace through their own actions and break that violent cycle going forward. Now, if every family does that, we can have peaceful cities, peaceful villages, towns, states, and countries. And then when we talk about development, we are talking about young people having that responsibility to first develop themselves. There's a popular quote, and one of my favorites, by Leo Tolstoy, that says that everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Now, if we want to change the realities that we all face in Africa, start with yourself and attend to your own personal development. There's another saying that you are the sum of the five people that you most associate yourself with. So if we take 20 persons from this webinar and they can influence 5 other people, we now have 100 people who are now more self-aware than before. And if that cycle continues, a tipping point will occur so that anger and fear will no longer prevail over desire, over goals, over visions, and over dreams. Now, I know that this reality will not miraculously emerge overnight, yet undertaking personal development will not only help individuals, but will influence those around us. You can change Africa. Every young person can change Africa, but not by pointing out what is wrong with Africa, but upgrading your model of reality to coincide with what you wish to see in Africa, the Africa we want. It's an inside-out job. We have to learn to network with other young people in different parts of the world to generate or merge ideas and or solutions to issues. Learn to connect with organizations that align with your visions and your dreams. Collaborate with persons from other sectors. Take advantages of every opportunity given. Every space that you are in is a chance to make your mark. Work on your weaknesses. Enhance your strength. Represent yourself well and with integrity, honor, and excellency. Create opportunities where there are none. Remove barriers that hinder your voice and be grateful. We as young people are the now and we are the future. That's our superpower. When we have holistically developed ourselves, Africa naturally develops. Development and peace goes hand in hand. Let us not continue to chase one and leave the other behind. We need both to advance, and we need all young people to play their parts of doing the inner work that is necessary for the outer impact. Africa is at a particular stage in its advancement where African youth have the potential to bring forth transformative change by doing things differently, the inside-out way. So let's continue building that bridge between peace and development for a much more sustainable future and for the Africa that we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Honorable Dr. Monique Lynch, for such an informative, hard-hitting, scintillating, and deep submission and counsel to the youth of the African continent. And now, very quickly, I have just seen, very quickly now, we'll be having Professor Nick Chisman. I don't know whether he has already joined. We'll be having Professor Nick Chisman. But before we have Professor Nick Chisman, permit me inform you something about the African Union Youth Assembly. We have youth president-elects in every country who will help us in this journey of trying to map up the destiny of Africa and steer it to greater heights. These youth president-elects are in charge of their resident parliamentary youth assemblies in addition to the other 141 foreign representatives representing the African Union Youth Assembly abroad, making a total number of 195 countries at the African Union Youth Assembly. Now, the Security Council of the African Union Youth Assembly plays a great role with its primary responsibility to uniting the youth and young people of Africa before, during, and after their country's elections, making sure there is a peace, unity, solidarity, and harmony in Africa while training the youth to be watchdogs for peace, representing the voice of the youth in decision-making through freedom of speech, making sure there is a proper accountability and transparency in our governance system and in African countries' politics. In due course, we'll let you know how you will connect with the president-elect of your countries. Now, let's welcome Professor Nick Chisman. He's a professor of democracy at the University of Birmingham and was formerly director of the African Studies Center at Oxford University. Professor Nick Cheesman. I saw he had joined us, Professor Nick Cheesman. Okay. Meanwhile, maybe as he prepares to take the floor, let's have Dr. Kefa Otiso, Professor Kefa Otiso, sorry. Professor Kefa Otiso is a professor of geography and service excellency and director of the Global Village graduate coordinator at Bowling Green State University. Professor Kefa Otiso.
All right. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Your Excellencies, and all dignitaries, all protocols observed. I'd like to make it quick and pretty much reiterate some of the things that have been mentioned by the previous eminent speakers. So first of all, I want to observe that this is a timely topic, Mr. Nyamachi and your colleagues that you brought to the floor. So I'll make some general comments that actually apply both to peace and development at the same time. So to me, the reason, and I'll be addressing you directly, therefore you'll hear me addressing you as if you're in front of me rather than talking in third person singular and those types of things. So as far as I'm concerned, youth, you are the majority, and we've already had that. Actually, you represent 60% of the continent's population. And in some countries, you're actually a higher proportion of the population. So to me, you have the most to lose when the continent falls into conflict. And if it ends up not being developed, then of course, you're the one to lose. So for that reason, I think the future is yours to lose or yours to gain. I would argue that I don't see any good reason why you should squander it. Given the resources and skills that you have at your disposal. The other thing I wanted to mention that has already been kind of alluded to is the fact that remember that you're the foot soldiers in most conflicts. We learned from Herbert Hoover in 1944 that it's older men who declare war, but it's youth who must fight and die. I actually saw another definition of war floating around today that it's basically something to do with human massacres that are initiated by people who don't, that are basically human massacres involving people who don't know each other for the benefit of people who know each other, but are not massacring each other, you know? And so, which connects with basically what Herbert Hoover taught us in 1944. So the whole idea of fighting other people's conflicts that give you no benefit is something that the African youth should be concerned about greatly. The final thing I wanted to mention briefly, then I go to solutions and how you can actually promote peace and development, is the idea that in any conflict, if you are the foot soldiers of conflicts across the African continent, then it follows that you also have an understanding, a deep understanding of local conflict conditions. And since you have that understanding, you can actually use it to promote peace rather than using it to promote more conflict and human life. So in the interest of time, I'd like to highlight maybe 6 or 7 or so things very quickly that actually you can do. In other words, adding to actually what has been said already in terms of the need for youth to take responsibility. First of all, you shouldn't underestimate yourself. As far as I'm concerned, the power of one is a lot of power. And I'm sure you've seen this quote floating around. If you doubt the power of one, try sleeping in a room with just one mosquito. And if a mosquito, as tiny as it is that powerful, then how about a full human being? It's simply not right for human beings to feel hopeless. And of course, the only reason you feel like that is if you have not really taken stock of the power that actually you do have. Number 2, it's important to be involved in the political and policy processes of your societies, countries, and continent so you can build more peaceful societies, given the fact that you are the one who have the most to lose. I remind you that nothing, especially power, is given. You must fight for it. And as a human being, you have a right to be here. And if you have a right to be here and you recognize your gifts and talents, you already have the power that you need to promote peace and bring about development in the African continent. And in line with the previous speaker, development begins with you. Number 3, channel your energies positively. As Her Majesty said a few minutes ago, channel the energy into development, volunteer in community work, and on and on. And here I would actually use a quote to remind you that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. The reason you see youth being misused and misusing themselves and abusing themselves is because they have not paid attention to their destiny, their purpose in life, and therefore use that to organize the use of their energies. I also remind you that where you sit in your old age, it's very easy to think, oh, I'll be young forever, no matter which age bracket you choose. It doesn't last. Human life is a fog. It comes up in a minute, and when the sun comes up in the morning, it is gone. You'll be old, you'll be 90 before you know it. So let me remind you then that where you will sit in your old age, as some people have observed correctly, depends on where you are standing right now. So which gifts have you developed? Which skills have you developed? Which relationships have you developed? Those are the things that actually will allow you to sit in a comfortable position in your old age. The next point I wanted to mention briefly, number 4, is to use your peer influence positively. Every one of us influences people. Somebody told me once that even the least connected people influences 12,000 people. If you are more connected, you end up influencing thousands. So rather than worrying whether in fact you have the power to bring peace and development in Africa, I think what we should all worry about, and including the youth, is the type of influence that you are exerting, because you are exerting influence. So make sure that you use your influence positively. Number 5 is to take advantage of modern communication and transport technologies to network, remembering that the best things in life come through relationships, and the worst things in life also come through relationships. Now, hearing people speak from across the globe today through the miracle of technology that we're utilizing reminds me that the youth of today have resources and actually gifts and a number of other things that many of us that are older never enjoyed. Can you imagine the cost of organizing something like this and flying people from across the globe and putting them in the same room and actually having them to even engage in the way we're engaging here? So we shouldn't. We should be thankful that actually we have technologies like the ones that we have that shorten the distances and actually create a global village out of a very big globe. So in other words, what I'm reiterating here, as was said earlier on, you have a lot of things working for you, including the modern transport and communication technologies that we have. Remember, even if you have to fly, people used to take months to go from Europe to the US, for example, or even from Europe to Africa, or from Africa to Asia. But nowadays, you can pretty much be anywhere on Earth within about a 7-hour flight. And these planes are getting more efficient and faster, therefore giving you an ability to connect to network and connect with people across the globe. As I go towards the end here, the other point I wanted to mention briefly is the need for you to maximize your gifts and talent, to innovate and move yourselves and your societies forward. Those that are coming in, let's say, from the Christian faith will know that a man's gift will make a way for him and bring him before great men and kings. So which then takes us back to, what is your gift? Do you even know it? And have you cultivated it? And the host, if I may use you as an example, notice what you have done with your gift, network, convening people, speaking and stuff of that nature. We don't have the same gifts, by the way. We all have specific gifts that are needed. In society, we should not be competing against each other. We should be collaborating. I think that's what a lot of us forget. We see somebody has developed their gift, we start competing with them rather than actually collaborating with them and using their gifts. Nobody is self-sufficient. There's not a single human being that is self-sufficient. Therefore, by definition, every human being is needed. All that we need is for these young people, you young people, to take advantage of your gifts and actually use them to make a difference for yourself and also for society. So it is your gift that makes our way for you. It is your responsibility to know it and cultivate it. Then it will actually benefit you and society. So I do also want to urge you to promote peace movements and peaceful community dialogue. Remember, war is a form of dialogue. It just happens to be destructive and ends up creating a lot of wounds in society. A lot of African conflicts are dependent and sustained by some form of resource conflict. So for that reason, I do urge you to promote sustainable resource use to minimize many of the continent's growing conflicts, including, for example, conflicts around water, conflicts around fisheries, and the like. So if you see a scarcity of water in your community, think about how you can actually alleviate that situation by making water available one way or the other. There are many technologies that are available to you that you can use nowadays to be able to deal with some of these issues. In line with what a previous speaker said, you have to take responsibility. Resource conflicts, and by the way, a number of them come from the perspective that if you have a resource, then you have everything and I don't have anything. It's a zero-sum game, which I'd like to discourage and actually think of a more collaborative way of living. Finally, I'd like to urge the youth to avoid unnecessary conflicts, which I define as those that have nothing to gain on the part of the one that is engaged in the conflict, and which of course also end up creating a high cost to you yourself and to society. So let me conclude here, but as you see, I really reiterated a lot of the same things that were mentioned earlier, and I think this should actually let youth know that the secret to success in life and being an influential person and being a responsible person and being somebody of substance is no secret. It's just a matter of using your gifts carefully, being responsible, and taking advantage of the resources you have at your disposal. It doesn't matter how small or little you have in your hand. Remember, even a big forest begins with a small seed. So take advantage of that small seed, invest it, and then in time, you'll be able to make the difference that you've been wanting to make. Thank you for listening.
Wow, Professor Kefo Tiso, my takeaway home today is that big forest starts with a small seed. And that's quite challenging to all of us. Now, very quickly, let's have Professor Nick Chisman.
Hi everyone, welcome. It's a pleasure to join you from Blantyre, Malawi. I hope everyone is doing well. I've really enjoyed the discussion so far. I'm Nick Cheeseman. I'm the director of CEDA, which is the Centre for Elections, Democracy, Accountability and Representation at the University of Birmingham. I'm also the Professor of Democracy there and the editor of the website www.democracyinafrica.org. And if you're particularly interested in youth issues, politics, democracy, actions, anything around that, I would encourage you to go to our website, democracyinafrica.org, where you'll see thousands of fantastic articles by many people like you and the speakers you've had today. So what I thought I would speak a little bit about today is the kind of tension and conundrum I see right now. Tension and conundrum is as follows. Year after year, in the last 10 years, we see the average quality of democracy in Africa has actually deteriorated a little bit. The continent's presidents for life, I'm thinking here of people like Yoweri Museveni, etc., show no signs of making way for a younger generation. And yet this raises an important question. We know that Africa is one of the youngest continents in the world. We think of those youngsters as being a force for democracy and progress. So why is Africa apparently getting more authoritarian as it's getting younger? Amidst a growing economic crisis and the arrest of opposition leaders in Sierra Leone, we will do everything to uphold the principles of our democracy. He wasn't alone. Young activists I talk to every single day from Sierra Leone to Zimbabwe on to Nigeria and Eswatini, opportunities that it promises. This should be a boon for democratic consolidation. After all, it's become a cliche to say that Africa is an incredibly young continent. If young people are more likely to demand change, doesn't this spell the end for an old and out of touch set of authoritarian leaders? But it's not quite that simple. Recent events tell us sometimes a different story. There are positives. For example, We know that the election of Hakainde Hichilema in Zambia last year was driven in part by young people turning out in large numbers to demand change. I was there. I walked around polling stations talking to young people who were openly saying that they were voting out an authoritarian leader and voting in someone better that morning. So there's lots of positives. But at the same time, it's interesting to note that actually most young people in Africa, if we look at averages, are less democratic than older citizens in Africa. And so what I want to talk to you about now is why that might be the case. It's common to pin great significance, of course, on the youth. We talk about the youth bulge in terms of jobs and opportunities, but also the potential risk for African societies and economies if there can't be jobs provided for the growing number of young people. We talk about the fact that this is an increasingly young population, and we're often told to expect certain things from the youth. The youth will rise up, the youth will trigger violence, the youth will drive democracy. The fundamental problem, of course, of all of these suggestions is that in reality there is no such thing as the youth. This is perhaps the most notoriously slippery category in all of political science. Different rites of passages mean that when you are an adult, and hence not a youth, is actually different in different societies. The fact that many youth leagues are led by individuals well into their 40s, and in one case I knew of a leader who was 56, demonstrates this point only too well. As a 42-year-old man, I'm inherently sympathetic to the idea that 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds can be young people. But it's nonetheless important to note that the term youth is often used in very different ways in very different countries. It's also important to note that the youth have an incredibly wide set of identities, just like the rest of us. The youth belong to different ethnic groups, different classes, different religions. All of these identities often prove to have a stronger allure than that of the youth itself, not least because, of course, they are more clearly defined. This doesn't mean that young people cannot come together to exert a powerful influence at key political moments. They appear to have done so, for example, in Nigeria around the protest, and in Eswatini, for example, where many student groups bravely are campaigning against the continent's last constitutional monarchy. However, it does mean that it's very hard for these organizations to sustain these kinds of political moments in the long term. This is one reason that youth movements rarely translate into organizations that reshape the battle for political power. Youth political parties, for example, are largely absent in Africa, and even where they exist, actually poll a relatively small amount of the vote. We simply don't have a youth leader mobilizing a youth constituency into power in any African country that I could think of. So that means we need to think about the relationship between the youth and democracy, and we need to problematize it and ask important questions about why that relationship isn't stronger. It's also, of course, important to be realistic. Young people reject authoritarianism. Survey data suggests that younger citizens are actually more likely to be tolerant of different kinds of life. That's good news if you care about women's rights or LGBTQ rights in the future. But it's interesting to note that younger people don't necessarily turn out to be more likely to support democracy. The Afrobarometer is a wonderful source of data that some of you will know about, and it surveys 33 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa every couple of years. And this survey looks at, over 50,000 people across the continent, a couple of thousand people per country, nationally representative surveys. In the latest round of surveys from 2019 to 2021, they found that 66% of respondents between 18 and 25 said they preferred democracy to any other form of government. Now, there's a good news story there, and the good news story is that 66% of people prefer democracy. But there's also a worrying story there, and the worrying story is that that is actually the lowest figure of any age group. Let me just say that again. Young people in Africa, survey data, actually are less supportive of democracy than any other age group. Now, of course, one reason that young people might be less sympathetic to democracy, despite the great work done by the many youth activists I talked about, is the frustration of operating in a largely gerontocratic society that makes them feel deflated. If you're a young person operating in a system where older people are consistently promoted and given power, if you're a young person who's consistently not allowed to speak, if you're a young person who consistently finds that you're told to sit down and listen to your elders, you might find democracy a frustrating experience. It's also true, of course, that people want jobs. People are frustrated with the fact that democracy haven't delivered. And the people who it hasn't delivered for, in many cases, are young people. COVID-19, for example, led to a fall in unemployment, and a rise in employment across the continent. And that rise in unemployment, particularly amongst young people, who partly because they had been hired last, were most likely to be laid off first. So there are good reasons for young people to be frustrated with democracy, but it's nonetheless worrying that the young appear to be more supportive of authoritarianism than older citizens. Even if the youth wanted to promote democracy, however, it's not clear exactly how they'd be able to do it. And I'm sure many young people on the call want to promote democracy, but are frustrated by the opportunities available. Lacking resources and status, and having had less time to get their identification papers sorted, we know that young people are systematically less likely to be on the electoral register, and hence they're less likely to vote. Effectively, young people are disempowered across the continent by the process of voter registration and the fact that it pushes the costs onto the voter rather than having them borne by the state itself. Given this, young people have to be particularly creative to shape the political debate. Evident this dynamism is display in every country in the continent, I'd say, fueling innovation and creating new opportunities for self-expression. When resistance become organized and effective, however, the problem is it's often taken over or banned, taken over by older figures or banned by authoritarian governments. A lot of the research on youth organizations, for example, from protest groups to vigilante groups to Okada drivers, has stressed the capacity of powerful political leaders to co-opt and ultimately demobilize challenges from below. William Reno would trace the history of groups such as the Bekasi Boys and the Ojo People's Congress in Nigeria to explain the general failure of reformist insurgencies in that country. He argues that the cause of this failure is found in the legacy of patriotic politics of rulers who monopolize economic opportunities as a way of controlling people. More recently, Daboa explains how the young men who went into the networks of the ruling party itself. Ajibola points out that this is a doubly problematic effect. A potential force for change is subverted and used to reinforce the repressive control of those in power, while transmitted by the state. This raises a set of critical questions, and here I'll end. How can pro-democratic young people inspire their friends to reject authoritarianism? How can new movements that challenge incompetent governments be protected from co-optation and subversion? How can the different strands of youth politics be brought together to empower young citizens in a way that strengthens democracy? Its status as the world's youngest continent will sadly deliver no democratic dividend. Thank you very much.
Wow, Professor Nick Chisman, such was a hard-hitting, wonderful, informative, and scintillating submission, counsel and insight to the youth of the African continent. Now, at this juncture, your Royal Majesties, your Excellencies, your distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, let's have the regional coordinator at the National Construction Authority of Kenya, Architecture Festus Mariera. Welcome, Architecture Festus.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Sorry, by the way, the Royal Majesties, Excellencies, and the honorable and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I want to present you the role, in my view, of how the youth can promote peace and development in our continent. Coming from the construction background, as you see, I'm an architect and construction manager. We make quite a lot of use of the youth in the industry. The youth are our source of labor and also skill in the construction industry. And I know that some even of the practicing professionals, young men and women, are youth in this country and also across the continent. So I wanted to just put it across that from my viewpoint, I just want to, youth who are here gathered, to keep some thought in mind. It says, remember your creator in the days of your youth. And I want to say in the same breath that remember Mother Africa in the days of your youth, do her good. This presentation starts with an introduction where we will be looking at the situation in Africa. Africa has been referred to as the last frontier, an indication that perhaps something needs to happen here that has already happened in the other continents. This could be a pointer to rapid development or revolution of sorts. Africa is a continent of great potentials but broken dreams, resulting in decades of frustration and tears. Conflict is the order of the day in many parts of the continent. Therefore, peace is often the exception, not the rule. The continent also suffers total underdevelopment of its infrastructure, as well as the human resource. It is a continent that has been exploited by outsiders, often to the disadvantage of its people. Africans dying because of, and not despite, the continent being rich in resources is a paradox that the whole world is still trying to figure out. So when I looked at the issue of peace and development, it looked to me that they are interrelated. There can be no development without peace, and there can also be no peace without development, because people will be frustrated. As per the definition of peace in my terms, peace is not the absence of war, but rather a complete sense of well-being of individuals and communities. Development, therefore, can be viewed as socio-economic progress, but it has aspects of intellectual, moral, governance, and infrastructure, among other constructs that define development. The situation in the continent continues to be one where there is always deadly conflict, and this has gone on since colonization and worsened even during post-colonization. Neocolonialism has given us a false peace, where a few owners of capital in the West cooperate with our own to continue the same exploitation that went on under the colonialists. Indeed, the late Professor Wole Soyinka defined neocolonialism as the boot of oppression, changing from the foot of a white man and now being worn by our fellow black man, which is by far the most succinct definition I ever found on the issue of neocolonialism. Myself, I've been a youth, of course, like even any other people who are middle-aged like me. And we had a president in this country who happened to have a very great passion. That's the late President Moi. He had very great passion towards the empowerment of youth and women. And despite his very well good intentioned direction, he called the youth the leaders of tomorrow. And we very well know that there is an English saying that goes that tomorrow never comes. So therefore, if we say the youth are leaders of tomorrow, or they are leaders of the future, will they ever lead? So that, so for everyone that's listening to me here, the only way youth can be involved in peace and development is first to view and treat them as leaders of today. So even for countries where constitutions have been hailed as progressive, of which Kenya is one, the issues of youth have been given lip service. Not that there's anything wrong with such constitutions, but essentially because the thinking of the political class has not progressed at all, we shall thus look at the discourse on the issue of the role of the youth from two viewpoints. That's what the youth can do and what can be done for the youth in promoting peace and development. And in my discourse, I've largely concentrated on what the youth can do because they are not helpless, they are powerful, they are strong, they're intelligent. So I've just alphabetically arranged the presentation in a manner that we will start in an ABC format. So the first thing that the youth need to do is accept our identity, to be proudly African. I remember Her Excellency in the keynote address says that we should be proud to be African. And I think the African label for our youth will give us inner peace. And certainly no development can be engineered by the youth unless they believe in themselves and what they are capable of. The education systems and the media have been skewed to make us admire Western looks and lifestyles. And that's perhaps the greatest tragedy that has happened to Africa in the recent times. Africans are fearfully and wonderfully made, as the Bible tells us in Psalm 139:14. And the black skin is one of the best assets that we have ever been bequeathed by our Creator. So as Africans, we should not go into bleaching skins and adopting Western hairstyles or copy their accents. I actually have nothing against the West myself. It so happens that my grandfather was brought up by the British in those years of early 20th century. But we have to let the whites be white and Africans be Africans. So point number one, our identity. So we need to decolonize the minds of our African brothers and sisters as youth so that we can now face the reality that awaits us in terms of helping Africa to be developed and also to be peaceful. Number two, the youth need to be agents of change and continuity. Our society has been largely seen as traditionalistic. Not that we were conserving anything good really, but because we were doing what the others used to do without knowing the principles and the basis of why they arrived at what they decided to do in those days, what we call our traditions and our cultures. So, for example, we never used to have clothes maybe slightly over 100 years ago. And we had what we call legislated privacy. And using that maybe in the 21st century may not be appropriate. So the youth are the people who can challenge the status quo so that we can possibly move and develop as a continent. Number three, they need to cultivate habits for success. Many youths in our continent could be entrepreneurs, but could be wasting themselves in idle and harmful practices like drug and alcohol abuse, and also many things like gambling and betting, among other things that youth need to desist from if they are to be very useful in moving Africa forward and also avoiding being used in conflicts. Idle youth have been misused by politicians to carry out the wicked schemes, which they are left to languish in jail or in abject poverty thereafter. So the youth need to pursue their goals with their dreams and ambitions with determination. Number four, the youth should not lament. We could be in a bad situation in Africa, of course we are, but we should not lament that they stay at the point of lamenting, that there's something we can do about our situation. Bad situations are a springboard for creativity. We have to think outside the box or without the box, as they put it nowadays, Because the youth are energetic, they can do either manual tasks, and also their brains are sharp. They can think and invent things, and we'll be able to progress as Africa instead of spending our time maybe in conflicts and idle actions. The other thing is that the youth can be very good entrepreneurs. They can create jobs for themselves and for others by just wise utilization of scarce resources. I've seen youth who can do wonders with what we could think which have been dumped, and they come up with wonderful things as a result of that. I know that our youth in Africa are creative, and given a chance, they will be able to create the jobs that we so much need in this continent. If you look at even the people who invented the bulb, like Thomas Edison, these were just youth. So the youth should not despise themselves, but they should look at their wonderful potential in being entrepreneurs. Number 6, they need to evaluate new and emerging technologies. Youth are very versatile in using emerging technologies. I know that even my children can do better things with my phone and my computer than I can do. So we expect that this sphere of new and emerging technologies, the youth will take a leading role in where Africa, or what Africa should adopt going forward. So the next thing, number 7, is find solutions appropriate to our continent and our context. I would say that this continent suffers a lot of things. Like even the construction industry, we find that virtually most of the jobs are being done by foreigners from the East and the West. And even what we call access to government procurement opportunities in my country, that has not had a desired effect of empowering the youth, because the youth end up being used and they do not get anything in return. That paying of lip service to the youth continues to be one of the biggest problems that Africa has to sort out if we are to develop. Then the next thing is that the youth must be leaders in integrity. Integrity is one of the biggest issues that have kept Africa backward. In that when people who have access to systems do not have integrity, then we find that there's proliferation of corruption and the likes of things which have made Africa to continue lagging behind. So our youth, they should not join the train of greed. They must say no to this and make a good name for themselves by standing out for their countries and for the continent. So the children, the youth of this continent have the chance to lead by example and integrity. They should not follow bad manners of the earlier generations if we ourselves have already adopted such bad manners. Then the other thing is paradigm shifts. Without paradigm shifts, we will not have some of the changes that are required. And the youth are the people who are most prone to be able to make changes. Youth are the people who can get new ideas. They move from the bad old ways of doing things. One of the reasons we have a lot of conflict, especially in my country, is because like in the pastoralist communities, there is a culture that maybe somebody who is getting married, a young man who is marrying, cannot take a livestock from his homestead. So he has to do some robbery, do some what they call stock theft in order to pay dowry for his bride. So some of these things, if we have young people who have gone to school, because education is very important, it will have a lot of impact. Those are the ones who will help us in driving the paradigm shift so that we move from the bad old ways which are keeping us in constant conflict. Then the other thing that the youth can do, number 10, is participate in sports and promotion of talent. We have a lot of talented young people So if they engage in sports and games, that's one way of keeping them out of conflict and also to enable them to develop themselves. The next item they could do is also protect the environment. We know that if we don't work with a long-term view, we will destroy the environment and we will not be able to have any future. So environmental degradation fits pretty amongst us, and we need to, as youth, move with the quick effect to ensure that the environment is protected and there is the resources of water and forests are intact. Then the next thing is shun tribalism, clanism, and nepotism, which are some of the things which have taken the continent or kept the continent from achieving its great potential. So this, because this kind of isms promote mediocrity, and that is what is keeping the continent behind. So we should embrace the shunning of tribalism and the isms. In fact, the framers of the American Constitution say, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So youth should be ready to speak against these practices in society that hinder the development of Africa. Then next, number 13, second last, is spearhead conflict management and resolution. Youth are rarely part of the creation of conflict, but can become part of the solution. Some of the conflicts that our youth may be involved in is, of course, it could be long-standing conflicts, which are between communities or countries also. The youth have a chance to be ambassadors of peace, promoting peace in Africa. Then the last thing the youth can do is terminate this gender-based violence. This is one of the things also that has kept us from growing, because as families and societies, we cannot grow so long as we allow this to go unabated. So as youth, you have a clear mind, you can think clearly, and you can see that this is really taking the continent in the wrong direction. So all the gender need to be given the chance to play their rightful role in promoting peace and development in Africa. In conclusion, I could go on and on because I'm very passionate about the youth generally, but I would say that as paraphrasing JF Kennedy, the late American president, I would say to the youth, ask not what Africa can do for you, but ask what you can do for Africa. In other words, you should not be passive, but active youth. Thank you and God bless you.
Wow, thank you very much, Architecture Festus Mariera, for such a wonderful submission. Permit me paraphrase your work in as follows. The current generation of young Africans is a freedom generation, and it needs to bring about a complete and permanent paradigm shift and embrace the organizational politics towards unity in a single purpose behind an idea whose time has come. It is the African agenda for youth, and it is impossible to resist. Thank you, Festus Mariera. Now, very quickly, let's have the founder and president of the International Youth Parliament. Then he will be followed by Honorable Dr. Adrian Desley. Then he will be followed by Mr. Johan Thagason, all the way from Puerto Rico. And then Dr. Jerry Karanja. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have His Excellency, Honorable Engineer Promise Nwadiko's founder and president of the International Youth Parliament. Welcome, Honorable.
Yeah, I welcome you all. I welcome you all. Yeah, and I bring you greetings from the International Youth Parliament. Yeah, I hope you all can hear me. Okay, fine. Yeah. So I bring you greetings from the International Youth Parliament. Yeah, I am the President, International Youth Parliament, Addis Ababa. Yeah, that comprises the entire continent. And yeah, it falls on my honor this evening to welcome you all and to quickly speak on the issues why we are here this evening. Well, but then I have to touch on what the International Parliament is known for. Yeah, the International Parliament being an independent global network founded by world young leaders to foster synergy among the youth and youth organizations globally. And our main focus is to create a space, for young people in decision-making process. And I think we've been doing that continentally, and we'll continue to do that. Yeah. On the topic of what I will call on the African Union Assembly and the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. Yeah, I feel one of the role of youth in promoting peace is being patriotic. Patriotic to its nation, patriotic as a citizen. Yeah, because it doesn't matter what we are saying here now. If young people are not patriotic enough to key in with their country leadership, there is not going to be a headway. Yeah, so I think one of the greatest challenges in promoting peace and development in Africa is for us to be patriotic and for us to tell ourselves the truth as young people. Are we really in for progress, or are we going to compromise along the line? Yeah, because it's been a great challenge, I must tell you, being a leader that controls young people in the continent. I know, one of the challenges we face is, young people not being stable, young people not being honest themselves, and young people, not being sincere to their country leadership. Yeah, because today, we are talking about on the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. And on the other way around, what kind of leaders do Africans have? Do we really have leaders that are willing to walk in line with young people? Do we have leaders that even when the youth are bringing in the strategies that will promote peace, are they willing to accept us? Are they willing to walk in line with us? Yeah, because I must tell you, I always say it throughout the way it is, because you see, we Africans, from the side of leadership, I think we've lost it, because we have all kinds of ruthless human beings, whom in one way or the other, are able to get into political leadership, and today, they are not looking towards what peace looks like. They don't care about it, and no matter what you say, no matter what you bring to the table, and no matter how you coin it to sound, they don't appreciate peace. And I think, you know, they find favor, they find joy in what, you know, destroys us than in the things that unite us, because, you know, the things that separate us, you know, put some incentives, yeah, in their pockets as selfish politicians. Yeah, so I also want us to, while we are speaking on these developments in Africa, in promoting peace, I want us to consider that who have we been able to identify leaders that are willing to run away with young people, that are willing to, bring in, give room for peaceful inclusion. I don't really feel good. I came back from the Pan-African parliamentary season, the before yesterday, and what we see in Africa is we coming in, day out. The African Union comes in, they speak their big grammar. The African Parliamentary Forum comes in, they speak their big grammar. The Pan-African Parliament comes in, they speak their big grammar. And all these grammars centers on stories without no headway. They come in year out to speak grammars, where good fashions, and then they come in, appreciate young people that speaks about
Thank you.
youthful inclusion our country.
Thank you. Thank you. I think His Excellency Honorable Engineer Promise Nwadigos from his office in Ethiopia has got some network challenge, and because of that, let's now move to Honorable Dr. Adrian Desley. Honorable Dr. Adrian Desley, the African Union Youth Assembly's Special Envoy designate to the European Union. I have also been made aware that he has also been given greetings by the King of the Kingdom of Ohanaeze and Global President of the UN ONGO, His Royal Majesty King Dennis Ozoro Kafo. Welcome, Dr. Adrian Desley. If Dr. Adrian Desley is not ready.
Yes, I am ready, sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you so very much, Dr. Yamashi. I bring you greetings on behalf of His Imperial Majesty, King Dennis Okofor, the UN ONGO President. He is unable to attend, and I'm speaking on his behalf as their global spokesperson on international relations. He is attending a festival currently and cannot attend, but sends you greetings and asks me to just give a brief introduction of the organization which was established for several reasons, namely to defend the rights of people everywhere, to enhance the quality of life for all, to fight for health of mothers and children, to preserve water and the heritage lands, and to create lasting solutions to poverty, hunger, social injustice. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, and now I move into my presentation. All protocols having been established, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union Youth Assembly, better known as the African Youth Assembly, is a powerful intercontinental-wide African Parliamentary General Youth Assembly. And you would have heard Dr. Yamashi mention this earlier, but it bears repeating. As the youth government's treaty body in Africa, with 54 African countries as permanent signatories to the Youth Charter, we have a cadre of 54 youth presidents elected from each country within the African continent, and 141 representatives with a reach of into 195 countries. The African Union 2063 agenda, which is according to the United Nations Environmental Programme, and I quote, "The Agenda 2063 is a shared framework for inclusive growth and sustainable development. It was developed through a people-driven process and was adopted in January of 2015 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, by the 24th African Union Assembly of Heads of State and Government, following 18 months of extensive consultations with all formations of African society," end of quote. The agenda seeks to build an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. In 2015, when the African Union's leadership vision expanded to be more inclusive and integrated of the desires of the people, an upgrade, if you like, of the older model. The then leaders saw the importance of an agenda that was people-oriented in practice and in application. First of all, I would like to express my most sincere gratitude to all leaders of the Executive Security Council of the African Union Youth Assembly. I see it as both an honor and a privilege to be among the executive leaders. And as we speak on the topic, the subject and role of youth in promoting peace development in Africa. Now, this is a subject that is of great importance for those who champion the Pan-African spirit of progress and development. Young people are the seeds of today that will become the trees under which we will seek to find shelter in the future. One of society's main agents of change and progress. We have a great effect on the economy, on economic development, in the stages of the life blood of our society, and the many social relationships develop effectively when young people know who they are. What we do will become the catalyst for change in their lives. Through these dialogues, we hope to focus on finding relevant sustainable development solutions for people to address issues in Africa and the global diaspora. My talk today seeks to identify the roles and contributions that the youth play in promoting peace in society. It also seeks to highlight the role of intergenerational dialogue as a strategy in promoting good continued generational leadership, and also to identify the challenges our youth face in leadership and governance input and development. Today, there are 1.8 billion young people worldwide who make up a quarter of the world's population and up to a third in many sub-Saharan African and South Asian countries. Young people are a massive cohort. They have an immense potential to benefit their society socially, politically, and economically. Africa has a population in which 75% of that population are under the age of 35. placing them in a perfect demographic as change makers. There is a greater need today among youth to prove themselves to those whom they look up to, and at times they significantly undermine and underestimate their own potential capacity to lead, and without opportunities handed to them by leaders to strengthen their experience and application of hard skills, they find themselves being unheard. Around the world, young women and men are at the forefront of efforts to prevent and counter violent extremism and promote peace. That quote came from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. Young people have been making their mark on our society and played a major role during the pandemic. Young people have shown that they are able to play active roles in leadership and policy, especially at the helm of grassroots and local organizations, as leaders, peacemakers, youth developers, and peace builders. The role that our youth can play in promoting peace and development will aid in creating conditions that will ensure the continuity of governance, the preservation of our cultural heritage, and the mobilization of communities, which safeguards our generations to come. According to Ifem N. Ubi, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos in Nigeria, in a workshop on the appropriation, dissemination, and implementation of regional instruments and indigenous democratic governance and conflict prevention mechanisms in West Africa. And I quote, "The issues, problems, and focus on youth became a worldwide issue in 1965 when the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the Declaration on Promotion among Youth of Ideals of Peace, Mutual Respect, and Understanding between Peoples, stressing the importance of the role of youth in today's world, especially its potential contribution to development." End quote. UNICEF defines adolescent and youth engagement as the rights-based inclusion of adolescents and youth in areas that affect their lives and their communities, including dialogue, decisions, mechanisms, processes, events, campaigns, actions, and programs across all stages, from identification, analysis and design to implementation, mentoring, and evaluation. My first point is that we need collaboration, and it was mentioned by one of our speakers. We need to encourage intergenerational dialogue between our youth and other generations, because working together is paramount when developing a community response to the global changes and current challenges that we are undergoing. All national leaders and youth must understand the sense of urgency that we face at this point in time. We must promote a change mindset, and Dr. Yamashi would have mentioned this, in systems approach. We need an attitude that change is possible. We live in a society where we hear all the time, change is not possible. In addition to this, we must also be willing to change and operate out of the box. This becomes easier if there is communication, transparency, and accountability between our generation and the generations that have our predecessors. Now, we also need peace promotion. Young people, according to a report of the Secretary General on Youth, Peace and Security, in a report by the Secretary General on March 2020, highlighted the essential role of young people in preventing and resolving conflicts and in sustaining peace. It concluded with two key findings, and there was a growing recognition of young people's security. It is encouraging to see many instances in which governments, United Nations entities, civil societies, African organizations are stepping up, including the African Union Assembly, to implement solutions that can make a difference. I feel very honored and privileged to be here representing the African Union Youth Assembly. Some of the core challenges that remain before us are things like structural issues, creating systems where young people can actually communicate not just utilizing social technology, but also being able to have their voices heard in the highest echelons of society. We also need to look at our young people as capacity builders, influencers, and decision makers. We also need to make it that our governments begin to get behind our young people and help them to bolster their voice, to have the recognition and the associations that they need, so that they do not feel as though that the effects, the energy, the input that they're putting out there is of no value. The role of youth in promotion of peace and development is very important because they are the seeds of the future. They're the seeds of the future generation. They're the seeds of democracy, and they're the seeds of economy and technology and improvement of medical science. There are the seeds of policies. There are the seeds of this society that my father's generation will be taken care of when they go to the hospital. We also need to ask ourselves about the barriers that stand in our way for our young people. Barriers such as poverty, unemployment, global warming, pollution. These are issues that can be addressed if we are placed in the right rooms, if we're given the right spaces. Young people, I say to you today, build a table, build a platform where your voice can be heard. The African Union Assembly gives you a platform, not only where you are in a place with like-minded individuals, but you're also trained, you're developed, you're pushed. We pull out of you what you yourself will not even see inside of you. Look at this current conversation that we're having, this dialogue, with some fantastic leaders that have gone ahead of me in their speeches. We need to answer some questions about ourselves and our identity. When I interact with young people across the spectrum, the biggest challenge that they have in making Africa the Africa that they want is identity. Trapped in a bubble of I am not good enough. Trapped in a society that tells us if you don't have education, then you can't make a difference. I am here to submit that we've heard from Her Majesty Queen Eden when she talked about the education. So if your issue is education, there are educational programs available to you. The kind of this platform gives you the peer-to-peer outreach and also the electoral engagement that is necessary to bounce your ideas off of, as well as to develop policies that make a difference to you. All the policies that we are deciding, all the conversations that we're having is about you. You need to be a part of the dialogue. You need to be a part of the conversation. I have seen some videos, I've seen some presentations where people say they never believe that great things can come from our young people, but look around us. Look around us. Look at, we have more than 85 persons present in this conversation dialogue right now. The African Union Youth Assembly should take a bow at what they are doing. They are doing an exceptional job. I feel really proud to be here representing this organization. And I say to you, young people, you can do anything that you put your mind to. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. Find mentors, find people who can invest in you. Join our platform, come on board, and let us help you become who we see you are destined to be. I am the Honorable Dr. Adrian Daisy, Special Envoy and representative of Barbados Permanent Observer Status, the African Union Youth Assembly. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Adrian Desley, for such a wonderful presentation and bringing us the good tidings of the King of the Kingdom of Ohanaeze, His Royal Majesty King Dennis Ozoro Kafo, who didn't manage to attend our today's maiden webinar conference because of a festival he is attending. Now, Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, let's now move to to the former executive at Mitsubishi Motors, Puerto Rico, who's also a writer and a consultant, Mr. Johan Thagason. I would also love to request our dear speakers to kindly keep time because time is not on our side. To the young people of Africa, you need to dare and storm the sky. If not now, then when? Mr. Johan Thagason. I don't know whether Johan Thagason, all the way from Puerto Rico in the Caribbean of the US, is already with us here in today.
Okay, yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here and to participate in this forum. I have to start by making apologize to you, Mr. Moderator, that my camera has been on and off. I had to do a diplomatic mission. My neighbor, a youth, decided today is a great day to cut the grass outside of my window. So the noise was unbearable and I had to go on a diplomatic mission. And I can report that it was a very successful mission and everything is right now on a good standing between us. But anyway, I must admit that I was a bit perplexed by the theme of this webinar, since I felt it's an awful responsibility is being put on the shoulders of youth by expecting them to play a significant role in peace and development of our future. However, thinking it through, it of course makes a perfect sense, since if the world does have a future, youth will surely have a much bigger role in it than my generation. You may have noticed I said if the world does have a future, not if Africa does have a future. I said the world because I'm a firm believer that there are no specific African problems per se any more than there are no Latin American problems or Asian problems or a Laos problem or New York problems. We may have problems and situations in Africa, Latin America, Asia and elsewhere, but the probability that such problems or situations are unique to a specific place is virtually zero. And I feel strongly that if we look at a problem as local, we only search for a local solution, while if we look at a problem as global, we may search the entire globe for a solution. And with a bigger search parameter, the chance of finding a solution grows exponentially. One of my ex-bosses' favorite comment was, if I have 10 people with the same idea, I have 9 opportunities for cost cutting. If we look past the implied ignorance of this comment and we try to make something positive out of it, it would be diversity. Development thrives under diversity. To improve his flock, the farmer brings in new bloods. To grow our minds, we need new challenges. The same can be said about education. If we go back, say, 400 years to about 1600 in Europe, a well-educated person would have studied Greek and Latin, mathematics, astronomy, law, medicine, and theology. And with this education, he would hold almost all of the knowledge available at that time and be quite unique among the population. However, today, a person, although extremely well educated, might only have studied one subject, we say medicine or math, and still, when graduating, only knows a tiny fraction of all knowledge available to us. Furthermore, this person will not be unique at all, since he or she will be competing with thousands of others with the exact same education upon graduation. 400 years ago, a doctor would have treated any medical problem he might have had, having studied the whole body. 100 years ago, we might have needed 2 doctors, for example, one for external injuries and one for internal. Now, we might meet an army of doctors only by poking our heads into a hospital, each with his own specialty. And we can say the knowledge of their specialty has greatly increased compared to past generations of doctors, while the physical area they study has been much reduced. The same applies to the lawyers, accountants, mechanics, and other trades. Therefore, it looks like we have a contradiction here. It seems that our education is not diversifying, but narrowing in scope. So we know always more and more about less and less until we know basically everything about nothing. But here is where our youth comes in. Our youth has an opportunity to do something that was not available to us, at least not so easily. Our youth has technology at the fingertips. They are growing up with it. What we are doing today in this webinar, talking live across continents, would not have been possible only a few years back, as one of the speakers already mentioned. With their cell phones, young students can reach for information, look at photos, and contact people across the world. They do not have the limits my generation had. Although they may study medicine, they may also research other topics, say languages, and become proficient without ever having to go anywhere. When they do have an issue, they can reach out across the continent or the globe to look for an answer, start a WhatsApp group or a Facebook page around the issue and find like-minded people to help them. Our youth will not be looking at problems as local. They address these problems with everyone, not just those physically around them. Therefore, they will have solutions from everyone, not only from the neighborhood. So every problem becomes evaluated globally. They have the ability to diversify without the diversification, so to speak. To them, it happens spontaneously. And I can see that on social media all the time. Herein lies youth's role for the future. The theme of this webinar is the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. And I believe we can say the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa, as in the whole world, is to connect us all. Hate and war are brought on by ignorance, and when we do not know anything about the other and only see them as a faceless mass, we tend to generalize and create stereotypes and then demonize them, which makes it easy to justify aggression and war. Therefore, the prospect of peace is much higher if we have friends across borders, friends that have helped us and we have helped them on occasion to solve problems, to discuss issues, or just to share. Reaching out and creating a group across the continent or the world brings diversity, and diversity drives development. When a person connects with a people across the globe, sharing ideas, jointly solving problems, building things together, we will see new ideas developed, new opportunities be born, and youth and technology will make this happen. We hear so much about negative impact of technology, and yes, it's true, technology has its negative aspects. However, we must also emphasize, and more so emphasize, its positive aspects. And youth is in much better position to highlight technology's positive characteristics than we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Johan Ferguson, all the way from Puerto Rico in the Caribbean of the US. Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I kindly beseech you to drop us your brief biodata at the chat box. Tell us your name, the country whence you come, the organization you belong, your position in that organization, and any other information that you deem fit for this August Assembly. Now, very quickly, let's have Dr. Jerry Karanja. Dr. Jerry Karanja, are you with us? Dr. Jerry Karanja, PhD.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
moderator. I hope you can hear me. Are
Yeah,
you able to
sure.
hear me? Thank you
Yeah,
very
sure.
much. So my name is, all right, thank you. My name is Dr. Njeri Karanja. I am a politician. I'm also a scholar. I'm also a financial specialist. And my presentation and what I'm going to share is to be a youth and also development and the economic progression in Kenya. First of all, I would like to say, we note all of us and we agree that youth make the largest population in Africa. We see we are about 65% of the youth in population. And so it becomes very important for us as a youth to endeavor to be agents of peace, to endeavor to be agents of dialogue and advocates of social cohesion in everything that we do and in our community. But what I would like to focus so much on when it comes to youth in promotion of peace and development, what really is that one thing that is a vice? And from my own experience, I can tell you that we have actually weaponized poverty in Africa. And so you find for a youth to be an agent of peace and development, then we have to start having a conversation. How do we end poverty so that we put youth in this space where they can actually be people who can promote peace and development? And I want to say, here in Africa, we have seen so much of politicians having what I want to call stomach infrastructure. And stomach infrastructure does create a people who are hungry, a youth who are hungry, and so they are very much vulnerable to being exploited. And you find that the fear of hunger that afflicts so many youth in Africa actually makes them hopeless. It gives them a misguided loyalty towards the political elite. And also there's a predicament where this is actually used to manipulate the youth, to manipulate how they make decisions, to manipulate the contribution they can actually make to the society. And one of the things that you actually find, it is about keeping the people poor so that they are powerless. And if they are powerless, then you can actually take advantage of them and puppet them. And you can actually take even hostage of their thinking. You can actually take hostage of the things that they are actually able to say when they come to the table. And so you find that when you keep people busy, then these people can't be involved in research. And so these people will believe all the propaganda that there is to say. And so for Africa, you find this is something and an avenue that has been very much exploited, so that you find we have a population where the youth are incapacitated in in how much role they can actually play in fostering peace and in also pushing for development. I would like also to say that you are also going to find a lot of weaponization of poverty. And what happens when you weaponize poverty is that you are going to find there is a lot of degradation of human dignity. And when you degrade human dignity, you find a lot of the youth go to drugs, a lot of youth are going to be involved in a lot of things that then the society is going to look at them as societal evils that the youth are actually doing. When you weaponize poverty, you are going to find you have an illiterate mass of youths. When you weaponize poverty, you are going to find you actually have very much available purveyors of violence and who are actually willing to rush to any violent activity. You're also going to find there is actually zero or a lot of lack of national productivity, because these people, at the place they are incapacitated to only believe that they can only count on the political elite to come and give them handouts for them to actually survive. And this actually destroys a lot of development in the communities that these youths actually live in. So it's my call to action that us as youth, we want to be people who are actually participating in the process of peace and development in our continent. And I would like to mention a few things. What can we do to de-weaponize poverty? And one of the things that I would like to mention is we empower ourselves as youth using education. And that's why as youth, in whatever capacity you are, if you are educated and you are able to pull 2-3 more people into that, please do. The other thing is to make sure all of us are being involved in what I call mental liberation. As a youth who is exposed, kindly speak out. When you go out there to your communities, talk to the youths. When you talk to 2 youths, we are going to do more 2 youths, and so we actually have more people onboarded into this mental liberation so that we actually de-weaponize what poverty can actually do in Africa. Another thing I would like to talk about is innovation. Let's all of us be champions of innovativeness, because through innovation we are able to fight poverty. We have seen a lot of innovative youth in Africa coming up with so many things which has actually contributed to the empowerment of their community. And so, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to submit to you that for me, what is very key to me is that all of us, in whatever capacity that we are involved in, let us play a critical role in de-weaponizing poverty in Africa. Because African countries, we've seen a lot of the political elites and leaders, we continue to to make poverty as such a vice, so that for us it is for our own selfish gains and also to promote our ambition. But if we continue to have a youth who are poor, a youth who are in poverty, then what are we saying? We are saying we have youths who are readily available to be used if we need to go and put up war or fight somewhere, if we have political campaigns where we need people to come and cause chaos, we have people who are readily available. But for us as the youths who are actually on this platform, for us as youths who are actually exposed, for us as youths who are actually trying to do something about the state of affairs in Africa, it is for us now to come out, try to, as much as possible, pull other youths out of poverty. And I want to submit to you that the WASP
it seems Dr. Faith Maobia, sorry, Dr. Jerry Karanja has got some network challenge. I thank Dr. Jerry Karanja for her wake-up call and such a scintillating presentation. Now, because of time, let's move quickly to Dr. Faith Maobia, who will be followed by Honorable Ambassador Justice Ronald. Dr. Faith Maobia, and kindly, dear speakers, let's try to be time conscious. Let's be very brief because time is on our side. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Faith Maobia.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kelvin, for having me add my voice in this ongoing conversation as we discuss the role of youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. But permit me to introduce the organization that I represent. I represent Youth Up Global, a youth based organization, a fast-growing social enterprise in the business of developing human capital, creating social impact opportunities, and building sustainable empowerment platforms for youth in developing countries. Today, Youth Hub Global is spread across 14 African countries for intercontinental relationship. We're also working with the Asian community, with India and Nepal in our network. But this conversation is about African youth. How do we get them in promoting peace and development? The thing here is that youth of Africa has lost faith in the political leadership of the continent. That is the problem. Across all nations of Africa, young people have lost faith. The problem is not us to talk about how youth will participate, how this will happen, or how they need to all come out. The thing is, at the end of the day, we interact with these young people. I lead young people. So we have regular interactions with them. One thing that we have come to understand, and that is also part of what His Excellency, Honorable Engineer Promise, was trying to raise when he was speaking. The fact that young people do not trust the process anymore. They don't trust the political leadership. They do not want to participate. And if you want to look at all the agitations, if you look at the NSAS that we had here in Nigeria, spearheaded by young people, it is because they've lost touch with the government, with the political structure. That said, in my attempt to research into how do we come out of this problem and what are the causes of this, I coined a word which I have worked on to develop. It's called youth economics. Youth economics simply means the economics of youth, inclusion, empowerment, and engagement. How do we bring young people to take center stage in affairs of the continent? So a lot of energy needs to be put into in ensuring that we bring young people together. And when we are trying to bring them together, we need to also talk to the old ones, to the elders, that they need to sit up. Because when you call on somebody and say, follow my step, what steps are they going to follow? So we need to ask ourselves questions, even as we begin to have these conversations. The political leaders must also be invited, and I'm also happy that we had the Queen, Her Majesty here, and we also had other representations at the government, at the political government representations, as they are part of this discussion. What steps are you leaving for these young people? Because there is a disconnect, and that disconnect is what is causing the agitations. And then His Excellency Honorable Engineer Promise also mentioned something when he said lack of patriotism. And then you must ensure that youth, young people get involved. That process of getting young people to be involved has a lot of empowerment processes. You can't talk about peace and development when there is unemployment in the continent. In fact, Africa is the capital of unemployment of the world. So you are talking about a pool of young people who are not rightfully engaged and employed. So you're going to be managing crisis instead of seeing solutions. But then, even as we are having all this before us, as leaders, the only thing that we are doing is to talk to our young ones. We know that you may have every reason not to participate. We know that you may not want to be involved in the process of developing Africa. But how do we get out of here? And that is why we are speaking to them. And that's why I'm also speaking to the young people that, the sound of my voice today, that yes, it is possible that we may not want to be involved, but that will not be a path to take. Amidst all this, let us also believe that we can make a difference. It is these discussions that we need to be having. It is not where we'll come and say, African youth have done this, African youth have done that. Rather, helping them to understand that amidst all these challenges, they can also make a difference. And that is the way to go about it. Ensuring peace and development in Africa is to let young people understand that political leaders, yes, they have failed us. They've told us several lies. Yes. And now young people do not even want to believe anymore But then as young leaders too, we want to trust that it is possible to make change or to bring the change or the Africa that we want. Aligning with the agendas 2063 of the African Union, and for the fact that, of course, that is the arm of this African Union Youth Assembly that they represent. Our goal for us in Youth Up Global, which is what we've been doing, is to develop the human capital by ensuring that we create programs that young people will be involved and young people will get engaged through empowerment programs. Because at the end of the day, you must make sure that these young people get the right and necessary skills. And in doing that, you must also give them opportunities to take center stage in decision making. So when you begin to build an intentional about bringing young people to be part of the process, that is the only time you will be sure of having that peace and development that we all desire. And I heard one of the speakers say that an idle man or an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So we must engage the youth, we must empower the youth, and we must ensure that we build inclusive opportunities for the youth. And that is the only way we can maintain peace and development. So youth economics means young people, you have a role to play. As much as we know that the political leadership has failed in several ways, in several areas, across various African countries, yet we will not leave it at that. We are also encouraging ourselves as young people to take that bold step to ensure that there is a change and that we can make a difference. I was given only 5 minutes to speak here, and I think I've covered that. Thank you very much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Faith Mwaobia. That was a wonderful presentation. And I'm actually so gratified to be the African Regional Director for your organization. It's an honor. Now we'll be having the Director for Ezesia Plus organization, East Africa. That's one of the most powerful organizations we have in East Africa. Honorable Ambassador Justice Ronald. Honorable Ambassador Justice Ronald.
Thank you, moderator, and I'm so happy to be here this evening in Kenya. And I'm very keen on not to repeat on what other speakers have already spoken about. But then just to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, for instance, if I may use an example, in this country of ours, in Kenya, when one joins a driving school at initial stages, you usually have an instructor. The work of that instructor is usually to tell the trainee, to show the trainee how to go round all along in the process of driving and anything pertaining to the driving school and the driving itself. But then the instructor, with the time, does not remain all the time on the steering wheel. Because then by so doing, then this trainee is not going to be able to drive. So what happens, once the trainers had some knowledge on how to go about it, there comes a time when the instructor sits aside on the other side of the driver and becomes a co-driver and an instructor. And of course, given that he is the instructor, there is usually a plague pedal that's on his side or her side, just to check and ensure that in case the trainee miscalculates, then an accident does not happen. So what do I say? It is high time in our continent that the youth are given priority in discussing and running youth matters. I believe that the youth are in a better position of identifying issues that affect the youth better than the older generation. For instance, a platform like this one that we have today, and I want to commend the organizers. the youth should be given time and actually, if anything, dominate. Where else we appreciate the great contributions and discussions done by our elders. But at the same time, we should notice that unless you let the youth learn their youth affairs, then you are not going to give them an opportunity to show or to practice, to showcase what they are able to do as far as development of our continent is concerned. Government appointments, organizations, institutions that deals with youth matters. It is only in Africa where, for example, a cabinet minister in charge of the youth could be even 70 years old, and the guy would be in the office seriously trying to tackle matters that affect the youth. So ironical, that only happens in this continent. So my take and my request this evening is that it is high time that the youth of Africa are given chance to deliberate, that it is high time we embrace the culture of youth for youth. Much as we may have our elders, much as we may have the aged population as the trainers, the instructors who at the initial stages that shown us how to go about it, there comes a time when they should sit aside and see us practice what they have already cultivated in us. That way, then the African youth could be able, or will be in a position to showcase or to bring into limelight their ability. Her Majesty the Queen spoke briefly about trainings. I am a strong believer that a youth that is not properly enabled in terms of skills is actually a disabled youth in terms of contribution to development. So I greatly encourage the participants, the governments, that if we invest in training our youth, especially in matters technical, vocational, then we are able to build and to come up with a population of the youth that is going to be productive. Because otherwise what happens in this continent, we have a large number of youth that are physically very strong, but weak professional-wise. Where else, we have the aged population, physically weak, very strong mentally and professional-wise. And so the status quo remains. So my point this evening, the youth of this continent should be properly empowered. Having been empowered, should also be given platform to practice that they have been empowered to do. The reason why, for example, the politicians, the political class finds it very easy to use the youth in achieving their dark objectives is because they realize that these youth are not self-sustainable, that these youths are not independent financially, and so they could easily compromise them with a few goodies and small cash. So I insist that empowering the youth by training them, which actually is what my organization does here in Nairobi, Kenya, allowing the youth to speak youth matters and giving little space for the aged to only check on what we are doing and where we may be going wrong is going to help the African youth. Not necessarily putting totally aside the aged population or our elders with due respect, but allowing them not to concentrate so much or not to try and purport to sort what affects youth. For instance, Christians know that the old scriptures in the Bible say that in those old days, the old will see dreams, where else the youth will see visions. You could not have someone seeing dreams in charge of people that are seeing visions. That is my humble submission, Ambassador Kevin Yamachi, the organizer. And even in this platform, let us be the first to embrace youth so that in a forum like this one, then the youth are given priority to talk of what affects them. Youth for youth is my word of this evening. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Director Justice Ronald, for your wonderful presentation. I'm acutely aware of the good work organization Zesha Plus Kenya is doing to the young people of the city of Nairobi and the county of Kajiado. That's the way for the future, and that's the way to equip the young people. Permit me inform you that we will make a call after this conference. We'll make a call on the African Union heads of state and governments to enable genuine youth participation in public life, especially in governance, policy making, and economic development. Despite the vast majority of our African population being youthful, we do not see ourselves in the current leadership, in the current leadership in most countries. The African Union Youth Decade 2009 to 2018 Plan of Action stated that empowerment means having the ability for supporting, enabling conditions under which young people can act on their own behalf and on their own terms, rather than at the discretion of others. Our Dr. Adrian Desley and Her Excellency Dr. Monique Lynch are going to draft a document for the African Union heads of state so that we can make a call that we need genuine youth participation in public life in our countries, in the continent. Now, we are going to have His Excellency Mohammed Ali Dore, His Excellency Mohammed Ali Dore. Then we have Engineer Donatas Abuao. I give them kindly the shortest time possible, even if it's 3 minutes kindly, so that we finish this webinar conference in time. Your Excellency, Honorable Mohammed Ali Dore from Ethiopia.
Thank you. But I'm from Somalia. Thank you. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. First of all, let me introduce to myself. My name is Mohammed Ali Dore, and I am representing African Union Youth Assembly Office of Somalia. So, and I am a political officer in Somalia. So let me start to my presentation today about the African youth promote. So when we say African youth promote, first of all, we have to have peace building and conflict. So the first step is organizing the peaceful movements. And this area, we can see that the plan for the peaceful movements within the country grateful helps to promote, and also this is because of people, different background, religious, tribes, and ethics come together and interest freely. Civil education is put on the board of the teach of people. So also, secondly, we have to volunteer. You know, the African Union youth, we have to have volunteer in activities. So this is about to have visiting the clearly, and also it's a great way to giving the back of society and communication, and also the promote for peace. Support fellow talent youths. A lot of youth have different talents. Some are talented in, event, artists, and the building platform that can support these youths, and also the great way to promoting peace in the society. This is because of they will focus on their growth. Also, we have to the local and the national government. meetings. Such meetings are held within the country, and also therefore the youth should purpose to attend them, and they are able to listen to their leaders and also express their views of matters affecting them. This helps to create, between the youth and the government. So my conclusion is, as we know, there are the above voices aren't accused. The list of the youth are always the main focus, and the community must also support them. A peaceful country gives people the opportunity to work well and they promote its economic growth. Therefore, we all should be against violence. So this is my presentation, and I want to thank all of you. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, my friend, His Excellency, Honorable Muhammad Ali Dore, that was hard-hitting, scintillating, and brief. Now, I would love all the speakers who will fall off the mat to follow the same version of His Excellency Muhammad Ali Dore. At this juncture, permit me welcome the ICT lead Share Community Network, member of Share Professional Council, Engineer Donatas Abwa. Then after we have had Engineer Donatas Abwa, we will have Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu. Then we'll also have Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Komano. Then Honorable Okot Ola. Then Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Yayu. Then we call this meeting to adjournment. Welcome, Engineer Donatas Abwa. Let me check, Donatas.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Donatas Abwa. I'm a software engineer by profession, and my background has spurred software development for a number of African countries. I've served about 14 African countries, and the last 5 years, what I've settled to do is to develop community networks. So when I had this particular theme, I got very excited, and because besides what I do, the theme is so close to my heart. And what we do is that we develop networks to reach the unconnected. So what comprises of a community network is a network hub which connects schools, social gatherings, and of course maybe some special schools. And so we do that for the Siaya municipality. And what role do we play with regards to promoting peace among the youth? So what we did with the community networks is that we mapped out various causes of conflicts, and also followed by now basic issues that affect peace, so that we developed programs and strategies that mitigate these particular issues around the youth. And what we developed is a digital transformation center, which is of course the hub that connects different avenues like the schools, the social gatherings. And now what we have done to address the issues are that we are playing within the national themes and the continental goals that the government is leveraging through service provision in terms of funds to develop programs. For example, in the Digital Transformation Center, we have an EOS program, and that particular EOS program identified that within the municipality alone, generates about 200 tons of waste after every 6 months. And that is a potential income for the youth, and we have engaged around 20 of them, and we are continuing to advocate for this particular initiative across the not only for the municipality, but across the county, because our license only operates within the sub-county. So we want to have this conversation across our fellow countries in Africa, so that we can engage the youth, because this is just one area that we are trying to bring into interventions. But remember that there are several areas and there are several ways that we can come up with programs, and we can keep our youth busy. You know, as one of our presenters said there before, that there can never be peace when there is hunger, when there is joblessness, when there is unemployment. So we want to tackle those particular challenges that confront our youth to lack peace, such that now, you see, when somebody has a job, when somebody has some income, okay, they can afford to get some peace, okay? And as my parting shot to that, because I also want to take cognizance of time, and this is something that I would want to pursue with the chair, and I'm very happy that Your Excellencies, you are here. We'd like to have more community networks within Africa, so that we engage our governments to have a more in-depth conversation, because you see the community networks are so close to these youths. This is the only way that we can get closer to them, and by getting closer to them, we shall have a discussion of where the problems and how to innovate around opportunities that can actually mitigate or can address their issues. Up to that, I want to thank you very much, and I hope that this conversation will move to the next level. And when you'll be having your county, sorry, your assembly address, that you'll talk about community networks and how they can open opportunities for our youth in Africa. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And I must acknowledge that you're the one who made us those beautiful posters. Keep it up and keep working so closely with the African Union Youth Assembly. And as a body, we promise you that we'll stick with you and the rest of the Africans like belt and trouser. Now, very quickly, we should have Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu, Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu, then Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico. Now, Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu, please, let's kindly try to be as brief as possible. Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu, it seems is not yet ready. What about Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico? Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico, then go back
Hello, can you all hear me?
Oh, yes, yes, Eden Elijah Chinedu. Chinedu, kindly. Your background is so noisy. Meanwhile, as you put your house in order, somebody to mute Chinedu. Meanwhile, as Chinedu puts his house in order, let's have Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico. Valentin K. Comano is not ready. What about Honorable?
Hello, can you hear me now? The network is a little bit bad.
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Ambassador Ede Elijah from Nigeria. I'm the President, African Youth Development Council. Promoting peace and youth development in Africa is a collective task. The previous guest speakers and some other contributors have done so well. In fact, I've been busy learning, and this meeting is timely because every family needs peace. Talk more of a country, talk more of a continent. So we all need peace because peace will lead to development. But like other speakers have pointed out, you cannot have peace where the youth are not, excuse me, where the youth are not developed or where they are not empowered. So the basic thing is that there should be youth empowerment in Africa. Africa is very, very large. I don't expect that all the 54 African countries will be doing the same thing. So we have to look at our localities and see how we can actually empower youth in our localities, depending on what is working in each of these localities, because every country has their own natural resources. It's not what we have in Nigeria that we have in Ghana. It's not what we have in Ghana that we have in Kenya. So everybody must not be in politics. In fact, politics cannot feed a nation. We must look at those natural things we have, okay? And see how best to use them in such a way that as many people as possible can be absorbed, working on those natural resources. So in addition, I will also say that a youth should embrace entrepreneurship. Everybody must not work in an office. If we engage in entrepreneurship, the problem of unemployment and underdevelopment will greatly reduce, because trade has a way of creating opportunity for young people. So I encourage young people, youth in Africa, to get into entrepreneurship. Politics is very, very important. But if we can get into entrepreneurship, then harness our potentials based on the opportunities in our localities. I'm very, very sure that the next time we have this meeting, people who practice this will be smiling. Thank you, and thank you.
That was brief and straight to the point. Thank you, His Excellency Ambassador Eden Elijah Chinedu. I'm also so privileged and honored to be a patron to your organization. And permit me also congratulate you on your recent appointment as the HOD of Youth Affairs, Kwara State in Nigeria. That was a big achievement. Now, let's move to Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico. Valentin K. Comano. Meanwhile, as we await for him, Honorable Lokoto La should be ready. And then finally, our last speaker will be Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Eyayo from Ethiopia. It seems that we do not have Honorable Ambassador Valentin K. Comano from Mexico. Let's have now Honorable Okot Ola from Uganda.
Thank you very much, my brother Kelvin. It goes without saying that your powerful oratory has been the highlight of this webinar. I send you my greetings all the way from Kampala, Uganda. And I have heard everything that has been said. However, I want to speak to something that is very true to the future of Africa. We should leave no one behind. Many of us are talking about so many issues, and we forget that some areas of Africa actually are still in a state of failure. Personally, I'm from northern Uganda. At the time I was born, there was a 20-year war going on that finally ended in 2007 by a confused gentleman called Joseph Kony. Those students of history have probably heard about him. The instability, the regions of northern Uganda, South Sudan, where I largely live, I'm from the northernmost part of Uganda, and South Sudan has since taken up a lot of these issues, a lot of violence. We have seen a lot of loss of lives, and a lot of this impunity still goes on. And while my area is peaceful, currently in my local village, we host over 200,000 refugees from my neighboring South Sudan. Therefore, as we talk about some of these issues, my brother Kelvin, I would like to remind all of us that we should not tread the path of this resistance. We still have a role to support our brothers from some of these areas. We have also seen in the Horn of Africa a lot of instability, and currently the Sahel region, just below the Sahara, a lot of instability going on. What is our role as young people in this situation? What is the role of African Union Youth Assembly? Are we just going to tread the path of this resistance and avoid some of us who are left in some of these most egregious regions of Africa? No. Therefore, I would like to remind us the general hegemony of approach to these failed states currently is democratization, is economic reforms, and finally, a lot of the efforts have gone towards building institutions of a strong state. State building is very important. For those of you who are students of Fukuyama, we know this. And the youth of Africa, my brother Kelvin, I'd like to remind my friends here that we are the most vested. A lot of my older friends always tell me when I express so passionately about Africa, they say that if you're in your 20s and you're not a socialist, you're heartless. And if you're in your 30s and you're not a capitalist, you're stupid. But I always say, no. It's just that we are more vested in the actual issues of our continent. So, and then African youth need to be integrated in all of these processes of rule of law, democratization, economic reforms, ACTFA. We both know that if me and my brother Kelvin are trading goods, we are less likely to pick up guns and shoot each other or shoot each other's villages because we have higher levels of interest. And this is where we need to front ACTFA and building institutions of a strong state. The youth need to be involved. In South Sudan, we see a lot of radicalization of young people because of frustration. People here have talked of unemployment. But in some of these areas of Africa, unemployment is not even an issue. It's just so blurry, the whole state of the nation, that I just hope that as we build African Union Youth Assembly, that we don't forget, because the tactic of the colonial governments was divide and rule, to say that those that are left behind, let them stay, and those of us that are ahead, let us move together. I invite the African Youth Assembly that, as I reiterate, that we should not tread the path of least resistance. There's a lot of conflict zones in Africa with the Sahel, IGAD region, and there are a lot of African bodies like the East African Community. Currently, we have an issue in Eastern Congo. We have issues in South Sudan. We have issues in Ethiopia. We have issues in the Sahel. I strongly believe that if we are going to be a strong assembly and not just a mock parliament or assembly, that we need to build capacity on how we approach some of the issues in these toughest zones. This will define the character of African Union Youth Assembly. And many of us, myself, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a conflict scholar. We offer ourselves to be there to guide where we can in areas where we are well versed. But bottom line and minimum agenda is that we as African youth, and now that we are putting our hopes and Vision 2063 in the jar of African Youth Assembly, we need to come together and have an approach, understand the frameworks of conflict resolution, to be able to face such a challenge. That when there's an attack in somewhere in eastern or western South Sudan, we know how to approach it at the highest levels possible. We know how to delegate, rather than relegating ourselves to petty gratification of minor meetings and feel-good meetings in air-conditioned office. We need to be able to strongly tread this path. Therefore, in conclusion, I welcome all of us that we should not leave anyone behind. The spirit of Ubuntu should guide us as a guiding value. And while we speak of the problems in our relatively advanced states, we should not forget that there's utter failure of certain parts of Africa, and there's continuing destabilization and heartbreaking number of coups going on. Therefore, what is our response? Thank you. I remain Okotola, and greetings from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you, my brother Kelvin. Back to you.
Okotola, I must likewise observe that you're such a great orator. I am so proud of you, sir, and continue the same spirit as we map up the journey towards a better Africa, a continent that will be one of the best of all possible best continents in the entire universe. Now we are going to have Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Eyayao from Ethiopia. Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Eyayao from Ethiopia. Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, we are now coming to the end of our webinar conference. Thank you so much, the King of Baland, Emir, His Royal Majesty, King Emir Hayawi, for staying with us up to this point in time. Permit me also remind our dear audience that the Queen of the Prime Minister of Baland, Professor Queen Aden Trinidad, did inform us that she is providing free online courses to those who care to show interest in those courses. Therefore, kindly link up with Dr. Monique Lynch. She has already dropped her particulars at the chat box so that you can be part and parcel of the beneficiary of these free online courses. Now, let's have Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Eyayao. Haile Mariam Eyayao. As we are waiting for him, Dr. Monique Lynch has just posted in the chat box that for more information, please send her an email at monique.a.lynch@gmail.com. Then you'll be able to enroll to the free online courses. It seems that our dear brother, Honorable Ambassador Haile Mariam Eyayao, isn't with us here tonight. Now, I want to give an opportunity to just two participants to say something small in a minute. Just two of our participants to say something small in a minute. You can indicate if you are willing to speak at the chat box. Raise your hand emoji, the hand emoji in the chat box, so that we can identify you. Meanwhile, thank you so much for attending our maiden webinar conference today. And we, as the African Union Youth Assembly, we commit to ensuring that young people are afforded trust and acceptance in the role of decision-making so that we may all benefit from the true partnerships, opportunities for intergenerational dialogue, and strengthen the ability to tackle issues which affect young people's lives. I have a friend here who wants to speak. I hope Your Excellency Dr. Monique Lynch of Observed kindly allow him to speak. But very briefly in a minute.
Thank you very much, honorable members, His Excellencies, and all participants here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to add little. I'm from Ghana. My name is Samuel Ayikwe. I am the Country Director of Best Diplomat, United Nations Simulations. I'm also the Vice President of Young Liberals of Ghana. And I contested for the 2020 general election that happened in my country as a parliamentary candidate, as the youngest candidate in the 2020 elections. I want to say something a little I saw in African youth when it comes to politics and life. And that is why most of the politicians take us for granted. When I was contesting, I noticed in my country, if we are doing politics or campaign, they like sharing money, foodstuffs, and all those things for the youth. I noticed that is not what African youth needs. So I decided not to go to that tangent. I wanted to train people. I trained about 2,700 people in apprenticeship, like entrepreneurship. And what I noticed was, after training all these people and giving them their needs, they went back to take money from those who have money to spend, and they voted against me. So most of the African leaders have noticed that is the interest of the youth. And just imagine the money they were sharing for the people, the oil, the foodstuffs they were sharing for the people. I was able to train 2,700 people in my constituency. And we are about 7 candidates. Imagine each candidate is also training maybe 2,000 people. By the end of the 2020 election, we'll be able to create job opportunity for almost 5,000 or 10,000 youth in the constituency. We didn't do any of them. I trained, even some of the people I trained went to take money to vote against me. So I am saying that we can organize a simulation and name it the African we want, so that we can educate the youth to let them know that this is the reason why the politicians, the leaders, are not creating any job opportunities for us in this country or in this African continent. Because they know if they give you good foundation, they give you a work to do, they give you a startup, they give you an entrepreneurship, it's going to be difficult for you to follow them during the times of elections. And it's going to be very difficult for them to buy your votes. If you are working, it is going to be difficult for somebody to come in your presence with a penny for you to vote for them. So I think we need to start changing the mindset of African youth. And if we don't do that, we also grow to become leaders, and we are going to do the same. And if we keep doing this, it will be very difficult to bring a change in the youth minds of Africa. I also noticed something about African education. We don't put good education to the foundation. If you go abroad, you go to abroad. I know there are a lot of His Excellencies here and people from other countries. You don't go to a startup school, we call it nursery school, or the primary schools, where you will see somebody who has completed junior high school or senior high school teaching them in the schools. They make professors, people who have professional degrees. They train the youths. So they start from the foundation. So before they become adults, they have a different mindset or a different change of mind. In Africa, we put professors in the universities thinking the adult people need those kind of knowledge. We are grown up already. I have kids. If I'm in my classroom, my focus, I may be focusing on what the teacher is teaching. Immediately I get a text message from my wife, baby, our son is sick. Automatically, my mind will be taken off from the classroom. I'll be now thinking of how I can solve the situation at home. So I don't have the focus to focus on what is going on in the classroom. How then do you change me? You can change me when I have already grown up and have responsibilities on me. So I think the African youth, I'm so happy to join this. I'm so happy to be part, and whoever invited me, I'll say God bless the person. And I'm praying we have more time of this to talk more about this. We need to change the mindset of African youth first before we can change everything in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for observing that one of the terrible predicaments bedeviling the youth of Africa is Martha's stomach infrastructure, and it's spreading like bush fire. That's a sad reality, and we must look for a solution to that. Kindly reach out to me privately so that I can schedule you for our next maiden webinar conference, so that you can be one of the presenters. Thank you, sir, for such a presentation. Now, we'll just have the two who have raised their hands. Let's have Phyllis J. Powers, Square, and then Professor Awuku, 1 minute each. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good day, everybody. My name is Phyllis Powers. I'm a local attorney here in Philadelphia for 31 years. I will soon come in to $1 million US currency to be able to use it in Africa. Specifically, I have sent a LinkedIn connection to some people as I've been listening to this wonderful seminar today. It would be my position that we can start to rebuild our local marketplaces in Africa, which are often run down, old, haven't been rebuilt in decades. And we can use the youth to volunteer to help rebuild a better marketplace. From there, I really do believe with this $1 million, we absolutely need our own internet and cell phone and cryptocurrency to run together, so that to buy in the marketplace, we already have our cell phone, which has our cryptocurrency and our internet, and we're connected in that way. I do believe there has been much misinformation about China, but as I have researched that China is Africa's oldest, most dear, colleague today, if you will, for lack of a better word. They are one of our oldest allies. They not only have the largest military in the world to really support the endeavors we wish to take, but they actually do have the technological resources to help us get those cell phones that we need to build the marketplace. Well, that we can do it on our own. But the technology, China definitely has the cell phone, the capacity to build the cell phones, as well as to protect us from the outside foreigners who will come in to try to stop us. And also to help give us the cell phones that we need, build the cell phones that we need that will come with a cryptocurrency that is an African cryptocurrency. And I'm looking at maybe 1,000 cryptocurrencies. It will come with the phone, so we could start trading in our marketplace. But again, my name is Phyllis Powers. I'm an attorney here in Philadelphia. I've sent a LinkedIn message to some of you who are entrepreneurs. I want to recap. I believe the marketplaces are so run down in so many parts of Africa. We can target specifically, I'd like to start with Somalia. because obviously we've all seen that for decades and decades and decades before many of us were born, Somalians have been starving. So some of us are hungry, Somalians are actually starving, and we need to get in there and help those Somalians. I was listening to Mr. Mohammed Adori. I'm about to finish. I sent Mr. Dori, I tried to find him on LinkedIn. He was the Somalian politician who spoke. If he can actually, or somebody can share his contact information with me, that would be awesome. And thank you very much for this amazing presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get you his official contact so that you can reach to him. Thank you for your contribution. Now let's also have finally Professor Awoku. Let's have Professor Awoku as our last speaker.
All right, thank you, Honorable Kelvin. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Hello. All right. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to wherever. All right. I wanted to add something little to what my brother said, Ambassador Samuel. You know, as he said, yes, I'm also from Ghana. So what he's saying, I have also experienced that normally when it comes to African or Ghanaian leadership, you understand? But with him starting with it, I think with time, the youth will also try to learn that no, the leaders that are coming, that are giving us the 20 CDs, the 30 CDs, and vote for them, they go to the office, they don't mind us. Why don't we also try to follow someone who will give us an entrepreneur skill, who is going to give us something that we are going to use our hand to do? That at the end of the day, when that person is in the office, at the end of the day, we will not wake up, take on our whatever, go to the office, and they still go and beg. But we can also take control of ourselves. It's not an easy task at all, but like we all know, it will take some space of time. As one of our speakers said, before we have to do a change, this change must start with you, the individual. If you are able to change, then automatically people will also try to learn from your change. It's a good thing we are having this conference, but Mr. Honorable Kevin, we should not allow it to end here. We have numerous groups, but another day we allow these groups to have our conference online and it ends there. We have to see the practicality of it. Action without words. He said this word, no action. So as we are taking our words, or as we are doing the conferences, try as much as possible to take these actions into practice. And very soon, we know that Africa is going to be where we all want to be. Even if we are not alive, we have to be at wherever we are. Because of time, I would like to thank you once again, Honorable Kelvin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution too. Your Royal Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our today's webinar conference on the role of the youth in promoting peace and development in Africa. We'll keep you posted on our future webinars so that we can all join, we can all in sundry join and learn together. As Dr. Monique Lynch observed, we will keep you posted in all our social media feeds, and the recording of this webinar will be made available in our YouTube channel. And for those who are in our WhatsApp group for the African Union Youth Assembly conferences updates, we'll also keep you posted therein. Thank you for staying as patient as cobras to the end of this webinar conference. And now I call upon Bishop Dr. Isaac Idampo to lead us through a closing word of prayer. Bishop Dr. Isaac Idampo, if you are still with us.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Let's pray in the name of the Lord. Father, in the name of Jesus, once again, we thank you. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for the reliant mind you've given us. We thank you for the understanding you've given us. We thank you for the thought you've given us, oh God. We thank you, Lord, even for the connection you've made us to have since the time we started, oh Lord of heavens. Here we come. We want these particular days ahead of us as we also think deeply of your hearts upon men, that you are wishing us, each and every one of us well. We want to pray, Almighty God of heavens, you are going to make these particular plans to come to pass. In the name of Jesus, I want to pray for each one of us who has participated. We are far and wide, but Lord Almighty, I'm praying this particular day, your spirit is going to keep us connected. Bless each one of us, oh God. Bless the leadership that we are having in this particular fraternity. Good name and also blessings of your will to be upon each one of us, oh God. Thank you for desire to hand over to the next generation a better standing of humanity who will serve not only today, but in the next days to come. So great is your name and great is your power. We are praying and believing you are going to make Africa a better standing place for your blessings and also for your acknowledgement. Thank you, Almighty Father. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray and believe, and the people of the Lord to say, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen, and I wish you the most fulfilling and rewarding times ahead as we look forward to our next maiden webinar conference. This was hosted by the African Union Youth Assembly, and I was your moderator, Honorable Ambassador Kelvin Nyamache, the chair of the steering committee of the African Union Youth Assembly and its director of events, summits, and conferences. A luta continua as we build a better Africa. Viva